Okay, so you guys have sent in a ton of stuff about this company, Dyadic International. Seems like you're really interested in like how they're changing the way we make proteins. I gotta say, it is some pretty cool stuff. Like it could really affect everything from the food we eat to the medicines we take.
What I find really fascinating about Dyadic is that they're not just, making proteins. They've actually come up with these totally new platforms called C1 and Dapibus, and they're really changing the whole game of how we actually produce proteins. And that has, these ripple effects across tons of industries.
So for this deep dive, let's try to break down what Dyadic is doing and really see if their tech can live up to all the hype. You've obviously done your homework. You know they're on the NASDAQ Q as DYAI and all that. But what really makes them different?
Well, it all comes down to efficiency and being able to scale up. Like the traditional ways to make proteins can be slow and expensive, and they need these huge facilities. But Dyadic's platforms are like these super streamlined protein factories. They're getting faster production times, higher yields, and lower costs, which could be a game changer in a lot of fields.
All right, let's get into specifics. One thing that caught my eye was their work on cell culture media, especially for like cultivated meat. Lab-grown burgers have been in the news for a while now. But one of the biggest problems has been how expensive they are. How could Dyadic change that?
Well, you got to think about it. To grow meat in a lab, you need to feed the cells with the right nutrients. And two key ingredients are albumin and transferrin. They're proteins that are usually sourced from animal serum, which is expensive and raises some, ethical issues. So what Dyadic has done is figure out how to make these proteins without any animals at all, using their C1 and Dapibus platforms.
So making like a plant-based alternative.
Not exactly plant-based, but they are recombinant. So they've engineered this system where they can make these proteins in a controlled environment without using anything that comes from animals. And they're not just messing around in the lab. They've partnered up with Proliant Health and Biologicals, which is a big deal in purified proteins.
So this isn't just research. They're actually trying to make this commercially.
Absolutely. They got a $1 million milestone payment from Proliant for their animal-free albumin products. And they're aiming to launch their first recombinant human serum albumin product in the first half of 2025. If they pull it off, this could make cultivated meat way more affordable and accessible.
That's pretty impressive. But it sounds like they have bigger plans than just lab-grown burgers. What else are they working on?
Another big area for Dyadic is human pharmaceuticals. They're doing a two-pronged approach here, focusing on both preventing and treating diseases. On the prevention side, they're working on vaccines for pandemic preparedness. Things like influenza, Mpox, RSV, some serious stuff.
So they're trying to get ahead of potential outbreaks.
Yeah, exactly. They're involved in all the global discussions about pandemic preparedness. They even presented at the World Vaccine Congress. But what's really exciting is their work on the treatment side with monoclonal antibodies or mAbs. These are really powerful tools to fight diseases, but they can be super expensive to make using the old methods.
And that's where Dyadic comes in.
Exactly. Their C1 platform has shown it can make mAbs that are just as effective as the current industry standard, but with the potential for way faster and cheaper production.
That could be huge, especially for diseases that really hit developing countries hard. Are they getting any support for this kind of research?
Oh, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting. They got a $3 million grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop cost-effective mAbs for RSV and malaria.
Wow. Okay, that's a big deal. The Gates Foundation doesn't just give money to anyone. What does this grant tell us about Dyadic?
It's a huge vote of confidence. The Gates Foundation knows that Dyadic's technology could be a key to solving some of the world's biggest health problems. Making treatments more affordable could literally save lives.
It's incredible to think about the impact this could have. But it's not just about humans, right? They're also working on animal health.
Yeah, you're right. It goes beyond just human health. They're applying their technology to both pets and livestock. For pets, they're focusing on vaccines and therapeutics to keep them healthy. But the implications for livestock health and productivity are huge.
Like what kind of impact are we talking about?
Imagine a world where we could quickly and affordably make vaccines to protect livestock from all these terrible diseases. That's what Dyadic is going for. They've expanded their collaboration with Phibro, a global leader in animal health, to specifically target vaccines for livestock diseases.
So they're not just making the tech, they're actively teaming up with others to make sure it gets to the animals that need it. That's really impressive.
And they're getting results. Their C1 produced H5 bird flu vaccine candidate has shown some promising data in trials, showing high neutralizing antibody titers in both poultry and cattle. This could be a major breakthrough in stopping the spread of this devastating disease.
Okay, so they're making waves in cultivated meat, human pharmaceuticals, and animal health. Anything else? Or have we covered it all?
Oh, there's more. But I think this is a good place to stop for now. We've laid the groundwork for understanding Dyadic's core tech and some of its most promising applications.
All right, perfect. When we come back, we'll dive into some of their other projects and see what the future might hold for this really interesting company. Stay with us.
Do you want a deep dive podcast like this? Contact Bull Run by Charlie DeVanzo.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about all the ways Dyadic is using its protein platforms to try and solve some pretty big problems. It's almost hard to keep track of everything they're doing.
Yeah, it's true. They've got a lot going on. But that's also what makes them so interesting. They're not afraid to really explore what their technology can do.
Okay, so before the break, we talked about their work on cultivated meat, human pharmaceuticals, and animal health. What else should we add to that list?
Well, there's this whole world of life sciences research. Dyadic isn't just making the final product like, a vaccine or a new drug. They're also making the tools that scientists need to do their research and make new discoveries.
So like all those little vials of colorful liquids you see in labs, is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Things like enzymes, which are proteins that help speed up chemical reactions. One example is DNase 1, an enzyme that's used in molecular biology research to break down DNA. They're also developing mRNA and DNA-based tools, which are super important for gene therapy and all these cutting-edge fields.
So they're kind of like the behind-the-scenes heroes of biotech, providing the building blocks for all these breakthroughs.
Exactly. And here's what's really cool. Dyadic is working on making research-grade versions of these enzymes, making them more affordable and accessible for scientists. Imagine what kind of impact that could have on research into things like genetic diseases, or cancer, or even aging.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. It really shows how much potential there is in these basic tools. Like they're setting the stage for a whole new era of scientific discovery.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. But wait, there's more. We haven't even talked about their work in industrial applications, nutrition and wellness.
Okay, you're just showing off now. But seriously, what are they doing in those areas?
This is where we start to see how Dyadic's tech could help us build a more sustainable future. For example, they're working on making alpha-lactalbumin, which is a protein you find in milk, using their platforms.
So could this be a way to make dairy products without cows?
It could be. It's still early. But they've already gotten a $400,000 milestone payment for their work on non-animal-derived dairy enzymes using their Dapibus platform. And they're not stopping there. They're already working on a second enzyme.
It sounds like they're really serious about exploring how their tech can be used to make food. But what about those industrial applications you mentioned?
Well, they're developing enzymes for all sorts of things, like nutrition, biogas, biofuels, and biorefining, all areas with huge potential for positive impact. These enzymes could help us find more efficient and sustainable ways to make everything, from food to energy.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that one company could be involved in so many world-changing projects, but it all seems to come back to this core idea of producing proteins in a new and innovative way.
Yeah, you got it. Dyadic's success really comes down to the unique advantages of their C1 and Dapibus platforms.
Okay, remind me again what makes these platforms so special. We talked about it earlier, but I think it's worth repeating.
Sure. First of all, it's the speed. They can develop stable cell lines in as little as 21 days, which is way faster than the old ways of doing things. That kind of speed can be huge, especially when you need to respond to a new outbreak or develop a new treatment fast.
Yeah, in a world where new diseases can pop up overnight, that speed could be crucial.
Yeah.
What else?
Then there's scalability. They've gotten really impressive expression levels, meaning they can make large quantities of these proteins pretty easily. And of course, cost efficiency is a big factor. Dyadic's platforms have simpler processes, which means lower production costs.
So life-saving medicines could become more affordable. That's huge. But what about the quality of the proteins they make? Are they as good as the ones made using the old methods?
That's a good question, and the answer is yes. Dyadic's platforms make sure the proteins have human-like glycosylation and proper folding, which means they're just as effective and safe as the ones made the traditional way.
So they've got speed, scalability, cost efficiency, and quality. No wonder they're getting so much attention and investment.
Yeah, it's true. But it's important to remember that even with this amazing technology, there are still challenges. The biotech industry is tough, and getting new products to market is never easy.
That makes sense. What are some of the hurdles they might face as they grow?
One big one is scaling up production. They've shown great results in the lab. But going from research and development to actually making tons of product is a whole different ballgame. It takes a lot of investment, expertise, and careful planning.
So it's not just a matter of flipping a switch and suddenly they're making tons of stuff.
No, not at all. It's a complex process. You have to optimize every step of the production line and make sure the quality stays high. And then there's competition. The biopharmaceutical industry is super competitive. There are a lot of big players already.
So Dyadic will have to prove that their tech is better.
Exactly. They'll need to show that their platforms can actually do what they say they can do. Speed, efficiency, and lower costs. And they'll need to do it better than everyone else.
It sounds like they have a lot of work to do, but from what we've talked about so far, it seems like they have a real shot.
I agree. They've got the tech, a great team, and a clear vision for the future. But there's one more thing that's super important for their success. Partnerships.
You mean like the ones we talked about before? With Proliant and Fibro?
Exactly. Having good partnerships is going to be really important for Dyadic as they try to bring new products to market.
So it's not just about having a great product. It's also about having the right relationships to get that product out there.
Yeah, that's right. These partnerships give them access to expertise and resources, and they also help to validate their technology and get it into new markets.
It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly. And for a company like Dyadic, with their ambitions, going far is the only option.
Well said. But there's one more hurdle we haven't mentioned. Regulations. I imagine that navigating all the rules, especially for pharmaceuticals, can be a real pain.
Yeah, you're right. Getting new drugs and biologics approved means jumping through a lot of hoops. It takes a lot of time and money. And one mistake can set a company back years.
So Dyadic will have to be really careful and strategic about how they handle all those regulations. Have they shown any signs that they're ready for this?
Yeah, they have. They've been committed to following the rules in their past work. But as they move into new areas, especially pharmaceuticals, the stakes are going to get even higher.
So it sounds like Dyadic's journey is far from over. They've done a lot, but there's still a lot ahead of them.
Yeah.
But hey, that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And remember, for every challenge, there's also an opportunity.
Okay, I like that. Let's talk about those opportunities. What are some of the most exciting things that could happen for Dyadic?
Well, we've already touched on a few of them. Their potential to change the cultivated meat industry is huge if they can really bring down the cost of cell culture media. Lab-grown meat could become a real option for everyone, offering a more sustainable and ethical way to get our protein.
That would be amazing for the planet and for animal welfare. What about their work in global health? We talked about the Gates Foundation grant, but I want to hear more about the big picture.
Their work on making cheaper vaccines and monoclonal antibodies could be a game changer. Imagine a world where life-saving treatments for diseases like malaria and RSV are available to everyone, no matter where they live or how much money they have.
That's a powerful vision. It seems like Dyadic is really focused on using their tech to solve some of the world's toughest problems.
They are. And they're not just focused on healthcare. Their work on non-animal-derived dairy enzymes could change the food industry. And their industrial enzymes could help us create more sustainable and efficient manufacturing processes across a ton of different industries.
It's almost too much to think about. The scope of their ambitions is so big, but it's also really inspiring. It's like they're saying, yeah, the world has a lot of problems, but we're not giving up. We're going to use our smarts to find solutions.
That's what makes Dyadic so fascinating. They're not just a company. They're a force for change. Their technology could really reshape industries, improve global health, and create a more sustainable future.
Well said. It feels like we've covered a lot in this deep dive, but I have a feeling there's still more to talk about.
You're right. We've talked about the present and the potential. But what about the future? What's next for Dyadic? What challenges and opportunities are waiting for them?
Those are great questions, and I think we'll save them for our final segment, so stay with us, because we're about to take a leap into the future of Dyadic International.
Do you want a deep dive podcast like this? Contact Bull Run by Charlie DeVanzo.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last two parts really digging into Dyadic International, their amazing protein platforms, their ambitious goals, and the challenges they face. Now, in this final part, let's talk about the future.
Yeah, it's like we've been putting together this giant puzzle, looking at all the pieces of Dyadic's technology and all the ways it could be used. But now we got to step back and see the bigger picture. How could this puzzle change the world of tomorrow?
Exactly. We've talked about how much they've already accomplished, but they still have a long way to go. The choices they make now will decide whether they can really live up to their potential and turn their dreams into reality.
And one of the biggest things they'll have to figure out is how to prioritize. They're doing so much, from cultivated meat to pharmaceuticals to industrial stuff. It's impossible to be the best at everything.
So they'll have to make some tough decisions about what to focus on. Do they go all in on one thing? Or do they keep doing a little bit of everything?
That's the big question, and there's no easy answer. Each path has its own risks and rewards. Going all in on one area could lead to a major breakthrough, but it's also putting all your eggs in one basket. A more diverse approach is safer, but it might also slow them down.
It's like they're at a fork in the road, with lots of paths leading into the future. Which way will they go? And how will that decision shape the company?
Another really important thing is going to be navigating all the regulations, especially for pharmaceuticals. There are so many rules, and one little mistake can have huge consequences.
So it's not enough to have a great product. You also have to understand all the rules and make sure every step is documented and follows those rules.
Exactly. They'll need to find a balance between pushing the boundaries of innovation and making sure they're following the rules. And as their tech gets more advanced and they start doing more things, the rules are probably going to get even more complicated.
It makes you wonder if all these rules, while they're important for safety, could actually slow down innovation.
Yeah, that's a valid point. There's always this tension between progress and being careful. But I think Dyadic knows how important it is to follow the rules. And they've shown that they're willing to work with regulatory agencies to make sure their products are safe and meet all the standards.
That's good to hear. But let's not forget about the ethical side of things. We touched on this before, but it's worth talking about again. As Dyadic's innovations become more common, we need to think about how they'll affect society as a whole.
Absolutely. Like take cultivated meat, for example. Could be great for the environment and for animals, but there are also questions about whether people will accept it, whether companies will be honest about how it's made, and what will happen to farmers and the agricultural industry.
And as Dyadic makes treatments for diseases cheaper and easier to get, how do we make sure everyone benefits? How do we prevent a situation where only rich people can afford these life-saving medicines?
These are tough questions that we all need to think about. Dietic has a responsibility to develop its technology in a responsible way and to have open and honest conversations about the ethical implications of its work.
It's a good reminder that scientific progress shouldn't happen without thinking about the consequences. It needs to be guided by ethical principles and a commitment to making things better for everyone.
Definitely. And beyond those big ethical questions, there are also practical challenges that Dietic will have to deal with. Like as they start making more and more of their products, how do they keep the quality high? How do they make sure everything is consistent?
Yeah, that makes sense. When you're just making small batches in a lab, it's one thing. But when you're trying to meet demand all over the world, there's a lot less room for error.
Exactly. And they also need to protect their intellectual property. Their inventions are what makes them successful. And they'll need to find ways to keep other companies from stealing their ideas.
So it sounds like Dyadic's future is going to be a balancing act, pushing for innovation while keeping quality high, protecting their inventions while working with others, addressing ethical concerns while growing their business.
You got it. It's a tough road. But Dyadic has already shown that they're adaptable and innovative. They've built a strong team, and they've gotten funding from big organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Those are good signs. But like you said earlier, the future isn't set in stone. It's shaped by all the decisions that are made along the way.
That's true. We can look at the trends, we can see the potential, but in the end, Dyadic's future, just like any company's future, will be determined by the choices they make.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Dyadic International, we want to leave you with this thought. Keep an eye on this company. They're doing groundbreaking work in protein production. Their journey is just beginning, and the possibilities are endless.
Their innovations could really change the world. But as we've talked about, the road ahead is going to be full of challenges and tough decisions. It's an exciting story that's still being written.
And that's what makes it so interesting. The future is full of uncertainty, but it's also full of potential. And companies like Dyadic are leading the way, using their smarts and determination to make the world a better place.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've learned a lot about Dyadic International and their potential to make a real difference.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Stay curious. Keep learning. And keep asking those big questions. Until next time, keep on diving deep.
Do you want a deep dive podcast like this? Contact Bull Run by Charlie Devanzo.